Big shout out to Aphrodite Rose Starfire. She hit pay dirt here on like 5 different levels.
But a couple things with, now they're really pushing for the, really like you got to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
And look, I respect people that think that they're going to turn into a lizard, and I get it. Or whatever the reasons are, I'm not mocking you. I get it. But
some people get magnetic. They're able to stick keys to their neck. I've seen that.
Well, then you won't lose your keys.
I know. I'm like, what's wrong with that? Sounds pretty good.
But you don't have always, you don't have always felt about the end of the world.
Oh yeah, we all go together.
I just want to all go together. Yeah. Again, I feel the same way. If this thing is going to make us all lizards or weird or whatever, do you really want to be one of a few 100,000 that are left? That the lizards are coming after?
No.
Like, why do you want to be the one that's left that's healthy
here?
Yeah,
it'd be like one of those sci-fi movies where you have to hide from the lizard people.
Yeah. So I'm just become a lizard with the rest of us.
Yeah.
No, but the other thing that I've noticed that can happen and I know, again, whatever you want to do is fine with me. I'm double vaxxed. I'm still doing my shows. I'm not afraid to be whatever. But I do want to say, I have a friend and her daughter-in-law and son did not want to get vaccinated because they already had COVID and they just were like, we don't want to. We already have the antibodies, whatever. But then a very, very fancy black tie wedding came up. And her daughter-in-law loves to go to a fabulous party. And they said, no, you absolutely have to be vaccinated because there's some professional athletes going to this thing. And so she's like, said to the daughter, you can't go unless did you get the notice. And the daughter's like, we get vaccinated tomorrow.
Just to go to the...
That was it. So
all their beliefs went out the window.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, if there's someone in your life and you would like them to, maybe you just throw a really great event. If they're party people and they don't want to miss it.
Right.
And if you don't, please don't write me. I don't care. I really don't.
I'm with...
So we could analyze this in about 15 different ways. But she starts out saying, I respect those people who think it's going to turn them into a lizard. No, really, whatever your reasons, I'm not mocking you. And then continues with the conversation as you just heard. It's all scripted. And they didn't write their own scripts. These scripts were given to them by the producers of the show. And they didn't just throw in a one-off, one-liner about lizard people. And they're talking about the world ending and wanting to all go together. So now, on to what I once thought was laser strikes. And it still could be directed energy weapon, but these I do not believe are laser strikes as you would imagine them when you look at those burn signatures. And like I'm saying, those are laser strikes. Because 3 reasons. Most of them land right here on the line. On the seam between 2 boards. 80% of them, there's 18 of these holes. And only a couple of them did not end up on one of these seams between 2 boards. Only a couple of them actually landed in the middle part of a board. Most of them are right on the line. You can see these 2. Another reason I don't think it's a laser as we typically think, because as I say in the video, most of them start on one of these beams. You can see the 2 screws right there where they bolt the boards down to the metal rail underneath the bridge. Most of them start right here at one of these rails. This rail goes this way, along underneath the boards. And the third reason I don't think it's a laser as you would typically think of it is because they are all perfectly perpendicular to the bridge. They all go perfectly this direction. If it was a laser shooting lasers like you think of in Star Wars, some of them would be at different angles. There wouldn't be so many of them that land right on the seam between 2 boards, and they wouldn't all start at one of these metal beams. So what I believe is actually happening there is that the bridge is so electrified that there is an arc of electricity going from one side to the other, arcing from one beam to the other, and this is where it burns up through. Like those, it's hard to describe, like bunny ears the Tesla technology where you see, the mad scientist in his laboratory and the two metal beams like bunny ears have a bzzz going up them and then it pops at the top. Anyway, I'm doing a very bad description of that. It's a arc of electricity. It's a thread or a filament of electricity going between the two beams and burning those boards. I believe the bridge was highly electrified, but I don't think it was a laser as you typically think of it. However, my brother-in-law did say that he looked up in the sky on the day of the fire and there was smoke all around except for directly over his head where there was blue sky, and he saw a pulsing star in the middle of the day. I haven't asked him, and it's been a while since I talked to him, but if that pulsing star was just flickering intermittently, it could have been a plasma filament. If it was flashing with equal distant timing between the flashes, and each flash also lasted for approximately the same amount of time, like it's a controlled, systematic flash, then we could be talking about something that's working mechanically in conjunction with this lightning. But even at that, it didn't shoot lasers the way we think of lasers, even though that's kind of what those look like. So I got to eat some Truther Crow and humble pie. This was actually my first plasma fire, the location of where I took my first plasma fire video. A year later, when they wiped my channel out, I just went back to the same place and took that video again. And I have about 4 or 5 of these boards from this bridge sitting in my backyard. Because when I went there another time, they had replaced the boards that burned and removed most of them, but there was about 4 or 5 of them sitting right next to the bridge as if they left them there for me. And they have the burns in them, and I have those in the backyard. I'll include a link in the description where I go over those. But I got to eat some humble pie because I've learned over the last 2 years some things I didn't know at the time. Having said that, this is what I thought at the time.
One, you'll notice there's a metal beam here. That straight edge is a metal beam. This one has a diagonal metal beam, but most of them start on one metal beam and go one way or the other. They're all the same width. And it doesn't go from hot to medium to cold. You don't see any burn here. It goes from absolute burn to 0 in the same 1.5 inch width, like a laser strike. Let's just call it what it is. That's a laser strike, and there's 18 more. Here, 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 all placing the shot of these directed energy weapons. So I'll just go through and show you. They all seem to come off of one of these metal beams, like what's right there, and I'll show you from the bottom side too. We'll get under here and show you. So there's 2. Again, that one comes off of this beam, but it's got a diagonal going underneath. This one comes off of that beam.
Notice how many of them are on the seam in between 2 boards as I'm going through these.
Beam, right here, and goes this way a little bit. There's 3 more.
All 3 of those.
This one, I don't know if you can see the beam, or maybe this one's like one of the exceptions. And maybe this one too. Most of them come off of a beam, but all of them have some similarity. They're all this wide and 0 burn on either side. That's a laser strike, and to hit this one bridge 18 times was target practice. When they charge up the directed energy weapons like the Athena by Lockheed Martin, by the ionized atmosphere, check out Ilana Freeland, Under an Ionized Sky. The ambient plasma burns the poles and everything else I've been showing you, but this is the directed energy weapon shots. Okay?
Okay, enough of that. Here's one of the rare ones. You can see that this one is actually in the middle of the board. This one is a seam going right there, and another seam going right here. So this one ends up in the middle of the board, but it is coming off of one of these rails. You can see the bolts where it bolts down here and here. So this metal rail is going underneath the wood right there, and this burn goes from the metal rail that direction. When 80% of them come directly off of one of these metal rails and 80% of them are on one of these seams in between two boards, that's the electricity finding like the path of least resistance. And the fact that they're all perfectly perpendicular and run in alignment with the boards tells me those are like bolts of electricity arcing back and forth between the metal railing underneath and popping up through in this spot. Big shout out and a thank you to Carol at Never Lose Truth, Marlo for recommending my channel and others who may have done so as well, and Robin for bringing it to my attention that we got some traction over there. It looks like backup has arrived. We got reinforcements. When Carol's with us, who could be against us? So the title of her video on this one is called Lighten BC Fire, Do Evidence Rural Communities Targeted by Climate Change. I'm trying to draw the attention away from directed energy weapons now, because I believe 90 some odd % of what we see is not directed. And if it is, there's a good chance they are directing this out into non-populated areas, because I've taken hundreds maybe, at least 200 maybe, of these videos of plasma fire. I've seen thousands, okay, in my truck driving. It becomes so frequent I don't even pull over and film them anymore. But most of them are in the middle of nowhere. Like when ground current reaches such a level that they know it's going to breach the threshold and start igniting things on the surface, they have to release the energy somewhere. And so they create a connection between the ionosphere and the Earth somewhere near where the ground current is rising, but away from populated areas. I believe there's a good chance that's what's happening. And yes, it can be directed. If it can be directed, it can be directed anywhere. But my point is, I think 99% of what we see is part of this natural phenomenon with the weakening magnetic field that allows the solar plasma through, and fluctuations in the magnetic field create a surge in ground current. So when they open up that magnetic field to let these ships go in and out, that might be part of what causes the fluctuation. And when they open a hole in the magnetic field, it might not snap back together like it always does, like a rubber band. Maybe it kind of gets stretched. One thing I do know is there's these things called skyquakes. When they stretch that magnetic field using things like solar magnetic amplification causative configurator, they stretch the magnetic flux lines apart, and when they let them go, they slam back together and create what's known as a skyquake, a big boom. Might explain some of the booms we've been hearing around the world, but just going to give you a quick piece of this, and thank you, Carol, for giving me a glowing review and making my channel seem pretty highly recommended. I appreciate that. And there for a second, I was afraid this is about to go viral, and I'm pretty sure that's not the case, because this is contained within certain circles, and this is not meant for everybody. If back when I was 19 or 20, still coming into the understandings that I have, and I was hit with this level of truth, I couldn't have handled it. I would have freaked out. This isn't for everybody. But Carol seems to have cultivated a culture within the consciousness of her comment section that are appropriate recipients of this information.
To just keep posting. But I want you to watch this video. And I want to thank the subscriber who, well, there were a couple who were talking about, let's see, is it, no? This one. Okay. Jeff Snyder. I will link below. He has, and I've watched many of his videos, and this one in particular, the laser strikes bridge 18 times in Spanish Fork, Utah. Flameless forest fire. Right. Okay. But he also walks you through the forest, showing how spiked are the, well, I guess they were just bushes, how how none of where he's walking in Spanish Fork, it's not a forest fire. You know, I think he says in the beginning that it was, you know, a training area for directed energy. But he also shows how the trees, some of the limbs begin to just bend, or you see like a little bit of a crack, like I just showed you in Lytton. You can watch this video. It's very educational, informative, and, you know, he walks you through, you know, just looking at all of the logs and the trees that are lying down, how they're burning actually from the underside and not the top, and you know, shows you that this is not a typical, you know, burn from a wildfire. But I want you to just listen to this in the very beginning. It's very interesting.
Oh, we already listened to that, and I already ate crow. But thank you, Carol. And we're all learning together on this learning curve. And I'm happy to have some other people joining me. School's in session, and all wealth is knowledge, and all economic growth is learning, and we're learning and getting rich so fast it hurts. But over the last couple of years, I think I've come to the conclusion that those aren't lasers being shot at the bridge as I originally believed. For those who are interested, I found the new platform for James True. Link will be in the description. He's only banned from uploading on YouTube for a couple more weeks, but let's go check him out over there if you want to see more of his content. I'm going to go ahead and recommend this channel after having only watched one video of his. Maybe I watched another one at some time or another, but I just watched this one the other day. And his biggest thing is the moon. He can see the moon. And he was trained by the Navy to navigate by the moon. He keeps saying that it turns 180 degrees every night. I see it turn 90 degrees, but either way, we're seeing the same thing, and that relates to the pole shift. And the other thing is, in this one that I've watched, the only one I've watched, he recommends Gregg Braden verbally. In this one, apparently he recommends him right there in the title, Gregg Braden. And so he and I are kind of on the same frequency, because he's also one who can see that the moon is turning in the sky in ways it never has. We never saw a moon on the horizon that looked like that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We do now. Every single time it's half moon, on one horizon or the other, it will be horizontal. It rises vertical, that one's almost vertical, but it rises a vertical half moon as you're used to seeing it, and it sets on the other horizon as a horizontal light line, or vice versa. It rises with this horizontal light line on one horizon, and then sets on the other horizon with a vertical light line at half moon. That tells me we are rolling. Now this guy's a full doomer. I can tell just by the by the titles. Where is he? We're all gonna die! But the guy's smart. He knows what's up. And he's probably sick and tired of There's a reason they call him Angry Catfish. He drops F-bombs every other word. So the vibe is a little bit low. Again, I've only watched one video, but the guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to the moon. And that's kind of a big deal, especially when we're talking about pole shift. He also apparently knows what he's talking about when he's looking at these magnetic fields. I don't know, I've only watched one video of his, but from that one video, I can tell you, if you don't know about the moon, watch this guy. He knows. He was trained by the Navy to navigate by the moon. And apparently he's a pretty big Braden fan here. So I'm going to have to check out some of his work as it relates to Gregg Braden, because that seems to be something he keeps touching on. And I can see that Braden's work is more relevant than ever today. And so the Schumann cavity resonance is something else Braden covers in his video titled Awakening to 0 Point. 0 point is referring to the magnetic field, when our magnetic field reaches zero. He also talks about this human cavity resonance and how it's the heartbeat of the earth, and as that vibration rises, everything else in our environment also vibrates accordingly, synchronized to that vibration. And the reason we wouldn't just naturally do the same is because of emotion. Greg Braden, through the Heart Math Institute, Dan Winters, has demonstrated the phantom photon DNA effect, where light entrains DNA. Emotion entrains DNA, and DNA entrains light. Only the latter part is actually demonstrated through the phantom photon DNA effect, where they put DNA into a vacuum chamber and then put some photons in there, light particles, and the photons align with the double helix of the DNA. And then when you remove the DNA out of the vacuum, the photons remain aligned in alignment with those DNA strands, the double helixes. In that video, he also shows studies that most of our genetic material, a lot of our genetic material is like switches that are turned off. One example he gives is that only humans, one species of bat, and a couple monkeys or something are the only mammals on Earth that cannot produce vitamin C within their body from other nutrients that they gather. They have to actually have vitamin C directly from citrus. But we have the genetic codes to be able to do so. They're just turned off. Has it always been that way? Could that change? And he speaks of how emotion entrains DNA. And that as that vibratory wave of emotion crosses the double helix, the longer, slower wave of fear offers you fewer opportunities of that wave of emotion crossing the double helix. And every point which it crosses, it has the opportunity to switch one of those flips on or off, flip one of those switches, or your DNA on or off. And the higher vibratory frequency of love crosses the double helix more frequently because it's a higher frequency. And as we go through this shift, the Schumann cavity resonance, people are starting, like MB3's video that I'll include the link in the description, where he says we are biological antenna, and our mood and our state of emotion is affected by the Schumann cavity resonance. As I said in my last video, he also shows a point where two interfering wave patterns create an oscillation that may be what keeps the human heart beating, and fear would be an interruption, a force that interrupts that pattern, and this may be why they say their hearts will fail them for fear. I believe it is more important than ever to be in love. And the only way to be in love is to not be in fear. And the only way to not be in fear is to face your fears. Just scrolling down his page here, I'm starting to recognize he's probably got quite a few things in here that are from Greg Braden's original video series, Awakening to Zero Point and Beyond Zero Point, The Collective Initiation. That looks to me, I believe that's the Temple of Hathor. Greg Braden definitely features this in that video series. And it reminded me of what James True was saying in his last video, The Tale of Two Dildos. He was showing you that these obelisks are a technology for using electricity, and that the pyramidion on top, the capstone, if you will, is made out of aluminum. And he made a reference to something very similar once before, when talking about, I believe it may have been the Temple of Hathor. Point is, let's just say it was, and inside there's no soot or ash or torches or any evidence of how they would have lit the inside of this temple complex and carved all of these carvings. Inside, they must have had a source of light. There was another time James True talked about putting a bowl in a casket with a lid heavy enough to bake bread. That was his words. And as that bowl decomposes and begins to rot, it makes these crystals glow. So there is a technology, unlike what we're familiar with, that existed before, that is more in alignment with nature, because you're using the electricity that already exists everywhere when you raise these pillars with the aluminum capstone and catch lightning and draw it down. That's what these obelisks are. That's what he was demonstrating, that they are a technology. The one that we have in the Washington Monument, there's also one in London and one at the cathedral, the Vatican. These are a technology for using electricity that we've been kept in the dark about. So be open-minded and know that just because the technology that we're used to is about to go away, there is other types of technology. But the one thing I would say is to open your heart, because being stuck on your preconceived ideas is not going to help you through this. Be like a child, certain about nothing, curious about everything, and you're good to go. Neil Young, after the gold rush, says they were taking Mother Nature's silver seed to a new home in the sun. After the lyric that says the loading had begun. Sounds a lot like what we saw in the movie 2012. It says, I was sitting in a burnt out basement when the sun burst through the sky. I was thinking of something a friend once said, and I was hoping it was a lie. That song is referring to this time and the experiences that we're having and about to have. There's always lightning before the thunder. And that thunder is referring to the arrival. I was dreaming of bigger things and want to leave my old life behind. Not a yes, sir, not a follower. Fit the mold, take a seat, take a number, take a seat in the foyer. It's talking about the sheeple. This filtration is going perfectly, and we don't want everyone coming with, and that's what I mean when I say this information is not for everybody. If everybody got to come with, the next world we create is going to be the same as this one. If most of the people get to come with, it's going to be mostly like this one. The purpose for the filtration is to elevate consciousness, to promote the greatest amount of happiness for the most amount of people. And one person who's reached the next level can have a greater amount of joy than a million people who are just in a state of slow decay. Not a yes, sir, not a follower is the lyric that it's singing right as it shows this scene. With the sheep, the filtration is obviously separating the sheep from the rest of us, but we were told that the sheep are the good ones. Regardless of all that, that's semantics. It's weeding out different characteristics of people and separating them into groups. And those who say there are no such thing as extraterrestrials, only interdimensional, fallen angel, demonic, this, that, and the other, that's the grossness in your heart that needs weeded out, or you don't fit into this petri dish. We've been cultivated with a xenophobia of everyone off of this Jim Jones Island and told anyone else that there is out there, they're not friendlies, they're all evil. That shit's gotta go. Don't defend Jim Jones when the perimeter gets breached. Enough of us have come in here to try to talk with the locals and let you know what's about to go down. That you've been warned. You've been given an opportunity to free your mind. from that emotional mind control. And it's all fear-based. Parables from the Bible and lyrics in music are very similar. Daniel would probably refer to this pine cone as a reference to the pineal gland. And all of you can see that there's an encoded message in there, just like a parable from the Bible or a lyric from a song. It's encoded and encrypted in multiple layers of meaning, and only a certain level of consciousness can access those understandings, like the parable of the beam and the mote is referring to pupil shape and imploring you not to commit genocide based on pupil shape, and to remove that beam from your own eye before you try and remove it from your brother's, and only then will you be able to see clearly to remove it from your brother's, because then you'll no longer want to. James said there's a serpent inside you that sees 7/10 of a second ahead of you. 7/10 of a second in time. And through your amygdala and the dopamine, and the melanin decides what you get to see and what you don't. How many people are, no, there's no serpent inside me? How do you know? Well, because I know that's evil, and I'm not evil. Free your mind, or you don't get to come with. Because there's a star-spangled celebration going to be had real soon. And your mind is only capable of conceiving what your heart is capable of processing. And that is how they blind you from the truth, is by giving you this emotional veil over your eyes, because you don't want to see it because of the way it feels. And they've programmed you to feel about these certain subjects a certain way in order to keep your mind from working. Never give up, no, never give up, no, never give up on your dreams. 'Cause it's about time to sail. This is how I show my love. This is how an angel cries. I blame it on my own sick pride. Maybe I should cry for help, and maybe I should kill myself. Maybe blame it on my ADD, baby. Maybe I'm a different breed. Maybe I'm not listening. 2 videos linked in the description are Sail by AWOL Nation. The official video is depicting an alien abduction. The other one depicting holy wrath.